Security guards, what's your creepiest, scariest story? Once we had a seemingly homeless guy crawl into a crawl space trying to hide in our casino. He suffocated, and we found his body 5 days later after a smell and biomatter had appeared on one side of the wall. Oh no, it's like the smell from my dead hamster but 100 times worse. Oof. We are genetically hardwired to think that the smell of rotting human beings is the worst there is. Got a call on the radio about something happening in the bathroom of our main building as there was a crowd forming. My brother and I approached the scene on foot since we were a walking distance away. We walked into the bathroom and I could see 2 very pale, blue-veined legs in one of the stalls. A man died on the toilet. His wife and kids were there, and apparently the last thing the woman said to her husband was, "Could you hurry it up, you're slowing us down." It was one thing to see the body and another to see the look on the kids' faces when they found out. That's one of my fears, to die on the toilet. Apparently it happens more often than you would think. I was doing security in a hospital at the time. Decided to do the basement patrol with a flashlight for funsies. I was sweeping the light into the offices when I saw a semi-transparent man staring back at me from inside one of the rooms. Well, I nearly shit myself before I realized I had caught my own reflection in the glass because of the flashlight. I like this one the most, because it's the kind of thing that would happen to me. And no one died. I've done something similar. One night back when I was staying with my mother, I was walking down the darkened hallway to the room I was staying in. In the deep gloom, I thought the door to my room was open, with the room itself in deep dark. As I neared the doorway, a human form suddenly appeared in front of me. I cried out and jumped a foot and cocked a fist, thinking someone had materialized into the apartment somehow, without any of us being aware of it. It turned out the door to my room was actually shut, and all I was seeing was my own shadow being cast against the door by the faint light from the living room behind me. It sounds silly, but if I'd had a heart condition, it would have killed me. I literally thought an unaccountable person was suddenly standing about 2 feet in front of me and quickly getting closer. Had a young female commit suicide in her car in the parking lot of a Harley-Davidson shop in the middle of the night. Years and other jobs later, I took new job and was seated next to a guy who turned out to be the boyfriend of the girl at the time. They were newly dating and he never understood what happened. I could tell the weight of it was still very much on his shoulders. I was able to confirm details as to what happened and answer questions. 2 weeks later, my previous job called and begged me back. I worked there long enough to run into this guy, share the story and set him closer to peace, then left and went back to my old job. Fate? Edit. I'll never forget sliding back in my chair to say, "Hey, I didn't mean to overhear you, but were you just talking to a coworker about losing a GF near a HD dealer in the past?" I was still new and hadn't even talked to him yet. My dad used to work security guard jobs after he retired because he could. He was on-site overnight shift at a paper mill here in Oregon that's part of a small town and is at the edge of the Cascades. He noticed over the course of about 3 nights that all of a sudden, all of the little critters he was used to seeing in the lumberyard were just gone. It was weird and quiet, and he was about to set out on his rounds when something made him pause and take a big step backwards into the cover of the guard shack. It's a good thing too, because the great horned owl's talons missed his head by about 6 inches. Those birds are fucking big, and they're territorial as fuck. Dad said they stuck around just long enough to kill every living thing under about 30 lbs in the area, and then they moved on. We had one of those fuckers, and it's made in a park by my childhood home when I was a young teen. Almost killed my stepdad, and he has some badass scars on his scalp forehead now. Makes him look like a Bond villain or something. They ended up having to capture and move them to a sanctuary after they killed someone's golden retriever. Oh wow, those owls must be bigger than I was picturing. Apart from the usual voices you hear, shades you see, light cracks, creepy old buildings, etc. One night I was passing by a playground park at around 3 a.m. and spotted an adult male and what appeared to be a kid 5, 6 years of ages, both swinging in total silence on them swings you have for children. It was cold, rainy, and both of them were poorly clothed for this type of year, and especially weather. Didn't seem homeless though. Pretty unusual stuff to do at 3 a.m. with a kid, you would say. I had lots of different things cross my mind that moment, so decided to take a closer look since I thought I was tripping. As soon as I got close enough for them to see me, still far from them, they just stared at me for a brief second and started running as fast they could, again without a single word spoken or voice sound being made. Not sure where they ran because I had to scratch my eyes for a second time to check if I was asleep or not. It isn't creepy scary as the other stories in the comments, but it was definitely a what the fuck brah moment for me. I've read a good portion of this thread, and this is by far the scariest shit I've read. I was a security guard at an old folks home that was essentially 2 buildings with a smaller building between them that acted as a lobby. One building was for assisted living, and the other was palliative care. I was in charge of doing a security check of every floor, including the boiler room and basement. One night, I took the elevator down to the basement and hit the light switch, walking down the hall toward the boiler room. About halfway there, the lights started shutting off at the ballast, one after the other. Now normally I'm not in any way afraid of the dark, but on this particular night, I started on a mad dash back to the elevator before the lights went off completely because there were no windows in this basement. It would have been too dark to see. In the process of running, I realized that the elevator had lost power as well, so I got to just stand there in pitch black darkness until someone upstairs got everything back on again. All in all, I spent 23 minutes down there in the dark. 0-10, would not recommend. My dad had a job going around and checking schools to make sure everything was properly alarmed, locked down during summer breaks. Had about 15, 20 on his list, and would try to bang them out all in an evening so he could have the next few days off. Told me that one of the schools was a Catholic elementary school, very run down and old, always gave him the creeps. There was a room in there that had a big-ass Virgin Mary statue, and it made him feel uncomfortable whenever he'd check in there, so he never spent much time hanging around that room. The last year he did that as a job, upon closer inspection, he discovered that the statue was actually hollow, so it could be moved around easier, presumably, and also that the eyes of the statue had small drill holes in them, so someone could hypothetically hide inside and watch people without them knowing. To this day, that's what he speculates was happening when he'd be in there. Kind of far out there if you ask me, but fuck, it's creepy as hell to consider, LOL.